And we will start with Don and Elaine today.
Okay. So Isaac called for Jacob, blessed him, and said, "You must not marry any of these Canaanite women. Instead, go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your grandfather Bethel, and marry one of your uncle Laban's daughters. May God Almighty bless you and give you many children, and may your descendants multiply and become many nations.
May God pass on to you and your descendants the blessings he promised to Abraham. May you own his land where you are now living as a foreigner, for God gave this land to Abraham." So Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Paddan Aram to stay with his uncle Laban, his mother's brother, the son of Bethuel the Aramean. Esau knew that his father Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him to Paddan Aram to find a wife, and that he had warned Jacob, "You must not marry a Canaanite woman." He also,
that was
oh,
it.
I'm sorry. Done.
All right. Fred and Julia.
He also knew that Jacob had obeyed his parents and gone to Paddan Aram. It was now very clear to Esau that his father did not like the local Canaanite women. So Esau visited his uncle Ishmael's family and married one of Ishmael's daughters, in addition to the wives he already had. His new wife's name was Mahala. She was the sister of Naboya and the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son.
Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. At sundown, he arrived at a good place to set up camp and stopped there for the night. Jacob found a stone to rest his head against and lay down to sleep. As he slept, he dreamt of a stairway that reached from the earth up to the heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down the stairway.
All right. Todd and Jerry.
And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, "I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and of God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give you and your descendants. Also, your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. And in you and in your seed, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you."
Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! There is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." Then Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put at his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it.
All right. Mom, are you able to read?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and finish the chapter, please.
Starting on 18.
Yeah, 19.
Then 19. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city had been Luz previously. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on, so that I come back to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone I have set as a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you.
All right. Does anything stand out in this chapter?
Can you, let's see, Jacob, I'm not, I'm losing my memory about, did Jacob have to leave the area, the last chapter? Did he?
No, but his mom knew that his brother wanted to kill him.
Yes.
And so he talked to Isaac instead of, because he didn't want Jacob to leave without his dad knowing. And so they kind of made up this excuse that he needed a wife.
It's amazing that Isaac didn't reprove him during this. I mean, he was almost like giving his blessing again to him. And I don't know. I wonder if Isaac recognized something in Jacob that he knew Esau didn't have.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You would
No,
think that he'd be really angry at this point,
Yeah.
but the
No,
text doesn't say anything.
no, Jacob was the one that didn't get the blessing, right?
Jacob got the blessing.
Jacob got the blessing. It was supposed to go to
Isaac.
To
Esau.
Esau.
Esau. Yeah.
Yeah, because the last chapter we talked about Jacob deceiving his father, deceiving Isaac.
Yes, yes.
And that's
right.
how Isaac gave him the blessing.
Yes. So now God is through this stairway is saying that this is a place that I'm giving you. So God is blessing him now, isn't he?
Yeah. It seems to me that God was going to bless Jacob no matter what. I don't know where that came from, but it seems to me that even Rebecca was acting on her own will, because she thought that the blessing was also to Jacob. But it seems to me that on this chapter, again, it seems like God was promising the covenant, was passing on the covenant to Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
And as the text doesn't say it, but it seems like Isaac kind of took it like, you know what, I wanted it to go to Esau, but I think, it's going to go to Jacob. And there's so much of this is so behind the scenes, and the text doesn't clearly say it, but just from people's reactions, it seems to me that people knew that it's going to go to Jacob, that Esau was this wild person who really didn't care much about God, and so because of that, that God gave his promise to Jacob, because Jacob was the one who was really serving God, even though he was the person who, at least on this issue, seemed to be the deceiver. What's interesting, though, is they called him the deceiver. That's what Jacob meant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Seemed like you had to live up to your name, didn't it?
yeah.
But it's interesting because Esau shows his immaturity by spitefully marrying outside exactly the opposite of what
That's what I
Rebecca
noticed in
and
verse
Isaac.
9.
I mean, that's pretty immature.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, well, I'll show them, and oh,
Wow.
Right.
And he already had a wife.
two of them.
Yeah.
Or it's dad didn't do what I wanted, so this is the way I can get him back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, I think Esau went as close as he possibly could to his family. I know for me, the other way to look at this, and it could go both ways. It's not like I'm disagreeing, but because his father was sending Jacob to go to Paddan Aram to marry within his family, Esau was like, well, I want to marry also within my father's family.
Yeah, I could see that.
And that is actually why in the Middle East, the whole thing about the Quran is that the true blessing is really with Esau and Ishmael. The true blessing is that these are the two that are supposed to get the blessing, because everyone else, like Jacob got it by, what is that again? Jacob got it by deception,
Trickery.
and Isaac got it because, Sarah was, or some people would say that it's because Abraham loved Sarah more, but really the firstborn son was Ishmael. Now, obviously, that's just an argument that the Muslim religion has taken. And so they claim the rights to all these holy sites in Israel because they claim to be the chosen people of God. And obviously to them, God is Allah, whereas the God of the Hebrews is Yahweh, or Jehovah, and the God of the Hebrews is the Trinity, whereas the God of the Muslims is just one God. And so all of these beliefs, I guess my point is, has its roots on this historical fight that the family had. And you can see Esau, for me anyway, you can see Esau grasping for a blessing that wasn't his. He was also, I think, in his mind saying, all right, you're right, Canaanite woman, I understand the history, so I'm going to go with another, I'm going to go with my grandfather's other son, so to speak.
Right.
And ever since then, the war between these two nations just continued until today.
Well,
When this first started out, there were not a lot of people there. Wasn't there incest in the propagation of the species?
Yes.
There had to be.
That makes no sense to me. I can understand it, but I don't hold with it.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what God's original plan was. Whether after an Adam and Eve, he's like, all right, I got to create another couple. Or if because of sin, incest would have negative effects. And I know that one of the reasons God allowed people to eat meat was because he's like, I don't want to live, I don't want to live that long. I know the Bible makes that point. And so when sin came, I'm guessing God allowed incest, not because that was his original plan, but because there was no other options from a sin standpoint, and he didn't want everyone to have the same kind of power of intellect that Adam and Eve had.
I'm sure the gene pool was probably a little fresher too.
sure, yeah. Yeah, there wasn't much of a gene pool at that time. Now it's huge.
Right. One of the things I wanted to bring up was this, how God decided to appear to Jacob. I thought it's interesting that he used a ladder. Could have used an escalator, I don't know, some sort of tram. But this shows me that God actually speaks to us with something we understand. It's amazing that during the time of the Old Testament people and also the New Testament, whenever God appears, he always appears with a sword. An angel appears, he appears with a sword. I think if God appeared now, and this is what our Sulet's missionaries was talking about. They set up a school in the mountains of Mindanao. I forgot which mountain that was. But anyway, they were going to set up a school there. And the first night that they were setting up a school, they just kind of slept in whatever building that they were trying to build. And the next day, the villagers came up to them and said, "Hey, I didn't know you guys, came with military presence." And the missionaries were like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "It's just us." He says, "No, we came last night. We wanted to kill you last night. And you had people with machine guns just roaming around, the school that you're in, that you're trying to build." And at that point, they said, "No, that wasn't military presence. That was God." And that's how they converted that whole place. And I thought it was interesting that at that point, the angels didn't appear with swords. They appeared with machine guns because, that's the context that people had back then. And so for Jacob, this was such a touching message because he thought God abandoned him. I think in his mind, he thought that God could never forgive what he had done. In his mind, he thought he already committed the unpardonable sin. And God appeared to him and didn't even mention it, right? You would think that God would have given him a lecture on, look, you need to stop doing this type of a thing. Instead, just God just through a dream basically said, "I will protect you. I am with you." And then he says, "I'll bring you back to this land and I will give you everything that I have promised you." And because of that, Jacob's reaction then is, "I'm just going to worship this God.
Yes.
I'm just going to believe in this God." And for me, I believe that God talks to us in the same way. I believe that God has his way of trying to tell us, look, all I've really wanted is you. All I've really wanted you to do is trust me. I think from this story, we begin to see God's character as someone who doesn't want to bring up our past, because I think our past is enough to bring us down. I think all of us know where we made mistakes. And if we don't know, then God will bring it up. I think that's where God will come in and says, "You know what? I need to teach you a little bit that what you did was a little off." And Jacob's response was just, "Look, I'm going to worship God back in this place." So in his mind, he makes this promise, "Lord, if you bring me back here, if I'm alive by the time you bring me back here, if you somehow make sure that, if all your promises come true, when I come back here, I'm just going to worship you. I'm going to make this place a place of worship." I have a feeling, I know for me in my story, there's these moments where God didn't come to me in a vision, but there were definitely strong evidence that God was saying, "No, I've always been with you." There's never been a time where I thought you made too big of a mistake. In fact, one of the things that I learned in my life is that when I make a mistake, and sometimes it is a mistake because you just don't know what you don't know. And like Jacob, I think he was just trying to survive. He was just trying to fulfill God's promise in his life. And I think many times that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to live the next day. We're just trying to make sure that we are successful in our life. And many times we give up our dignity because of that. Or we forget God's promises, or we just ignore God's promises. And then we get into this tremendous amount of trouble. And that's when God appears many times to say, hey, Concha, I knew you were going to do this. It's not like I'm surprised you did this. And the neat part is he keeps saying, I still have a plan for you. My plan for you is not dependent upon your mistakes, because my plan is so much bigger than what you think it is. And I think we can grasp that promise. And once we do, when we realize that God is really with us, then we set up our lives to say, look, Lord, whatever happens in my life, I'm going to give it back to you. It's only at that time that Jacob said, I'm going to give you 1/10 of everything. Because at that point, I don't even know how he would give tithe. I don't know. There was no church to give it to. But in some way or another, Jacob says, yeah, whatever it is that I earn, whatever it is that you give me, I'm going to give you back 1/10. It is my way of honoring you. And I believe that in our lives it's the same, that somehow we struggle with God with tithe until we get to a point where we realize that God's been with us all along, whether we give tithe or not, whether we're faithful or not. And our response to that is, Lord, you can have everything.
Did they happen to have Melchizedek at that time?
They might have, but it's not mentioned here.
How do we know that a dream or a feeling is a God-given feeling?
I know for me, the way I knew is when I knew God. Because I've had dreams that actually have come true. And it freaked me out. I don't know if you've had these dreams where, I dreamt of me being in a certain room. And a few years later, I was like, wait a minute, I've been here before, kind of things. Mm. And I talked to someone about that. And I thought his answer to me was pretty good. He says, look, there comes a point where God just needs to keep telling you that he's going to talk to you someday. And what he wants you to do is to just keep getting to know him every day so that you know what his voice is, you know what his will is, you know what his word is telling you, so that when you get a dream, when you get promptings, then you know it's him. And I know in my experience, the way I knew it's from God is because I knew it wouldn't have come from me. It wouldn't have come from my subconscious. That's why, like when I got the prompting that I'm going to be a pastor, I argued with him for years because I knew there was no way that was in my subconscious. I had no desire whatsoever to be a pastor. And even when, God wanted us to help SULADs, I knew that didn't come subconsciously. That was a direct calling from God. And many times I know it's from God because I start arguing with him and he still keeps giving it to me. So I think all of us have ways of trying to say, hey, God, is this really from you? Like with Gideon, put a fleece out. If God is trying to tell you something and you're like, yeah, is this bad pizza or is this God? Then you keep praying about it. You keep talking to people about it and it'll become stronger. It comes from God. If it's bad pizza, then, it'll be a different dream after you have your next pizza. So then you kind of know, all right, I got it. It's just bad ingredients. So I don't know if that answered your question, Elaine, but what about everyone else here? What do you think about that?
I continue to have, I think almost every night, many times during the week anyway, that I'm in some kind of city or a home that I'm so confused. I don't know how I got there or how I'm going to get out. And I wake up in the morning very confused about that dream, and that it happens regularly.
Hmm.
And I tried to kind of analyze what does that mean in my life? I don't know. It's a mystery.
How long have you been having it?
Oh my, I would say a year or two. It just keeps coming up.
Hmm.
And I basically kind of forget it, but it comes up again.
So it's recurring. Is
Yeah.
it the same kind of city?
No,
Oh,
different.
just different cities.
Yeah. Yeah, different location, but I'm always lost.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, if you're trying to figure out whether that's from God or, it's your subconscious saying, kind of telling you that you feel lost in just a lot of your journey, I would really pray about it. I would like, Lord, are you kind of do Samuel thing? Is this really you? And if it's him, like with
Let me know.
Samuel, yeah, he'll let you know. Definitely will let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that's going to be your Bethel experience.
Okay.
That, like Jacob, you're like, all my lands. I had no idea. Go ahead, Mom. You want to say something?
Yes, I have a story to share. I knew from the very start that when I had the firstborn, it will be a boy, because that's what I asked from God. And I told God that if it's a boy, Lord, I want him to be a servant of yours. So from the very start, I knew when they said that, when I went, for a test, they said it's a boy. I knew that God has called this boy to be a minister for God. And then when she told me that he was fighting and fighting against it, because he doesn't want to be a minister, but God has called him. I knew that from the very start, that God has called him to be a minister for God.
Wow. Praise the Lord.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps the first time my mom told me that. By the way, I emailed some of you. Yeah, sorry, Mom, I didn't email it to you, but I wrote an article for the conference newsletter. I should email it to you. And I mentioned that you told me that, you prayed for me since I was born, and you prayed for me to be a pastor.
Yeah, I have it here.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Don. And I told you that I wish you just prayed that I was going to be a wealthy man instead.
That's right. You did.
But yeah, thank you, Mom, for sharing. And that's kind of like the experience of, Jacob, or just anyone, where God's saying, no, I have a plan for you. And that plan includes me showing you that I'm with you always.
And now you're both a pastor and a wealthy man.
I wish. Uh, Thank you. It's true, though. I have wealth in many ways, just
Absolutely.
not my bank. All right. But if there's nothing else, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you for joining us at our prayer and Bible study session as we journey through the Bible one chapter at a time. We realize that you might have some questions or comments on the things that we discussed today. And if you do, please feel free to fill out the form below. Also, if you would like to have your own Bible, please fill out the form below and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next time at our prayer and Bible study session.